Ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, welcome to Step Back Tonight. Man, that music fucking pops, yo. That's a good music to get me like energized to destroy my vocal cords for 3 hours. Hey, how are you? Looks like I'm going for an 80s feel because I've got my Feminist Frequency 80s style t-shirt on and I'm listening to synthwave. So, whatever that means. Yes. Hello. My name is Tristan Johnson, and I'm the host of YouTube channels Step Back History and the much more popular Tristan Won't Shut Up. I stream on the internet where I do this thing that I'm doing right now. I do that 3 times a week. I've been doing it for over a year now. So you'd think I'd be good at it at some point, but no. I stream on Monday afternoons at noon Eastern, where I do a show called the Monday Discourse with my friend Mia Mulder, where we talk about comings and goings on the internet. And then the show you're watching right now is Tuesday night show, Step Back Tonight, where I look like an idiot for 3 hours because it's just me and nothing else to make me think to bounce off of. So I have to keep my own company and make my own entertainment. And then on Friday evenings or Friday afternoons at 2 o'clock, I do a show called The Reactor, which is a show where people send me content to react to, which I found out is a very popular genre of fiction. So there's a thing. And so that's what happens on Fridays, except for the Fridays where I have Step Back videos coming out. So, though that may, well, we'll see where things go with that, because I realize that hard coding videos to come out on the last Friday of every month is not necessarily necessary. I go by he, him pronouns, and my work can be found at stepbackhistory.com or tristanwon'tshutup.com. And what else can I say? Yeah, if you are on Twitch right now and you are an Amazon Prime subscriber because you want to catch up with what's going on and the boys, you want to see what the boys are doing, then you get one free Twitch subscription every month. And I do want to say that you should, even if it's not on me, you should spend that because it's free. And you get to help an independent creator. And trust me, independent creators need all the help they can get. And if you choose Step Back History, you are helping me immensely. You're helping cats get fed and rent getting paid, so it's very much appreciated. And yeah, if you want to catch my latest videos, on Tristan Won't Shut Up, I talk about planned economies. And on Step Back, I talk about Emma Goldman. And hang on tight, because I'm working on a video about that I've just entitled The Posting Wars, which is going to be a fun video on Tristan Won't Shut Up. And I'm working on Dinesh D'Souza Endgame, which is going to be quite... it's going to be basically... In many ways, it's going to be me stating the mission statement of Step Back History and talking about my PhD research and kind of making my one last appeal before people go into the election. So it's going to be quite a personal video. A little light on like the, just straight up history reciting content, but it's going to be a personal video. So if you like that, be excited. Other than that, I think is everything that I need to do with my opening spiel. Only 6 minutes, which is nice. And let's see what's going on in chat land. Matt has a duck out at 7:30 for a group call, but should be done before the stream is over. That's cool. You do you. I don't take attendance. Don't worry. Yesterday I checked out what a Roman soldier's rations were like. Apparently they got about 3,000 calories a day. That's not bad, but also it's not great. 3,000 calories a day sounds like quite a bit, because, like, that would make anybody who has a sedentary lifestyle gain weight. But if you had the life where you were like marching for tens of kilometers a day and doing war and stuff, 3,000 calories actually it would be, you know, starvation. Depends upon how intense they're working out, I guess. 75% grain, presumably made into porridge or tack, and 25% meat. Vegetables and cheese. Also, they got wine and olive oil. Is that better or worse than what a Civil War soldier would have got? So like from what I remember, like the thing about like probably also the military rations of a Roman legionnaire would be the fact that it's all contingent on how well they're supplied. Like let me just because like first like let's see, because like I know that like, for example, one common thing for Union troops, their standard issue was involved coffee. Let's just see. But also let's take a look. So here's what we got. Let's see. Roman soldiers got 75% grains, which, you know, could come in the form of bread or hardtack or porridge or something like that. That's okay. And then 25% meat, cheese, or vegetables. Okay. So, first we have to talk about first of all, we have to talk about a couple things. One, there was more of a solid mail system in America during the Civil War than there was during the Roman times. So what that means is that fairly often, especially in the South, soldiers were fed with get stuff from home. Like their families would send them food, and they would parse that out and they would ration that. But from what I can see, oh, almost spilled my water. The rations for a soldier during this time. Let's see. One ration would include 20 ounces of pork or beef, fresh or salted. Pork always salted, so that's not bad. 12 ounces of hard bread. Now this is bread that's made without yeast. It's just like flour and water. So without the yeast, there's no like fluffiness in it. There's no air in it. So the stuff is like hard as shit. And oftentimes hardtack could be infested with weevils, which are sort of like an insect that eats stuff because there was no really preservatives. So oftentimes like there's a whole thing about how like Civil War soldiers would do stuff like they'd have to dip their hardtack into their morning coffee so that the weevils would come out, and then they had to scrape the weevils off the top of their coffee so they could drink it. So that was like a thing they did. Apparently they got 1 ounce of compressed cube of desiccated mixed vegetables, or a 1.5 ounce compressed cube of desiccated potatoes. Okay. And so let's see what we got in here. So this would be supplemented by, per 100 rations, 8 quarts of beans or peas, 10 pounds of rice or hominy, 10 pounds of green coffee beans or 8 pounds of roasted coffee beans, 10 pounds of sugar, 2 quarts of salt, and 1 quart of vinegar. So, you know, it's definitely a lot more variety, but it's still sort of army rations before the days of, you know, regular, what's it called, before like vitamins and minerals really became a thing people realized were important. But this is after the time they realized that at least vitamin C was something people needed. That's probably why they got those vegetables. The most common field rations issued to individual soldiers were salt, pork, and hardtack, both of which were designed to withstand field conditions without deteriorating. Excess salt could be scraped off the meat to supplement the salt ration. However, these rations required cooking to make them palatable. Less experienced soldiers were unlikely to have their own cooking equipment, so they did have to cook all of their own meals. And the large company-level kettles were sometimes left behind during rapid advances. Food often became infested with insects, especially rice or grain weevils. Along with scarcity and inedible rations made it necessary for soldiers to supplement their diets on their own. Soldiers would obtain a greater variety of foods by foraging and or raiding, receiving food boxes from their families, or purchasing and trading items with soldiers. Soldiers could not count on obtaining food from the inhabitants of areas where they encamped, since most of the citizens were also affected by the war and had little to give. If inhabitants, yeah, I think that also like the Roman legionnaires would probably be well fed by the fact that they sacked towns and stuff like that, and they would probably steal a lot of food that way. If inhabitants supported the soldier side in the war, sometimes they might manage to provide food, but it was usually acquired by theft. Also, condensed milk was invented, and that was used in the army. Soldiers regularly drink coffee, however, it was not always entirely coffee beans. Dandelion root was sometimes used as a supplement, or ersatz good when coffee beans were scarce. Dandelion root was widely available and caffeine-free, tasting about the same as coffee. Well, there you go. Now, the South was a very different thing. So that was the North. The South, rations for soldiers in the CSA were supposed to follow the guidelines in Hardy's book. Hardy himself would serve the Confederate Army, as a corps commander in the Western Theater, although Northern quartermasters took the ration guidelines as their standard. The South's army found itself lacking in most of the items listed. See, the thing about the Confederate Army, and this is sort of why they lost, is because not only were they under-industrialized and underpopulated, but also their railway structure, their railway system was really bad. It had inconsistent gauging, and it wasn't centralized like the Union one was. So fairly often, a lot of like moving shit from one town, like in the South, railroads were a lot less. There were way fewer of them, first of all, but also like the railroads had to be like were often small commissioned things between towns because they were just designed for like offloading like cotton and things like that. So oftentimes during the war, Confederate soldiers had to like load all their shit onto trains, and then they would ride it for like to like the next town. Then they'd have to unload all that shit, and then they had to put it on donkeys or like horses or whatever, and move it over wagons to like the next station so that they could put it back on a train and send it again. So like it was really, really inefficient. And that meant that like because of the lack of like strong rail infrastructure and the fact that the military, because the Confederacy was so against centralized organization, that the military was very disorganized in general from the Corps. And so the Confederate military very often had trouble just like coordinating things and getting stuff to where it needed to go. Not to mention the fact that like most of the farms of the South had stopped growing food and were way focused more on growing cotton. So they didn't exactly have a whole lot of choice to go with. And the Confederacy spent the entire war under a naval blockade, so they weren't able to get goods in from like Europe or anything either. So basically, they would get like cornbread, and that's it, and tobacco because it's the South. So they often stole more and relied more on food from home. They would use roasted chicory root as a substitute for coffee. And also peanuts were a common Confederate food. Hey, thank you, Pansotozanesi? I don't know how to pronounce that one. Thank you for following. Welcome to the Orc Gang. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Another common... Okay, yeah, so that was sort of the thing. Oh yeah, here's the thing that I think was interesting. So they would have all these different types of foods, right? And then they would probably like make new things. And I remember one of this ones was, I remember seeing this in a thing, and I just got reminded when I was looking at this article that there's something called skilligly, which is you take hardtack, you soak it in water, and then you fry it with the fat from the salt pork that you got, and and some cornmeal, and you'd make like sort of like a mash that you would eat that sort of tasted like bacon. So, not exactly the healthiest shit in the world, but also Southerners didn't get all that much food, period, because they were often they were often like at the brink of starvation and stuff like that. So that's a whole thing. But was that better than a Roman legionnaire? Probably not a Southern soldier, a Northern soldier. It sounds like it was. How has your week been? Enjoying London? Yeah. I'll be honest. This past week has basically been the first week where I have kind of, because like COVID sort of having another resurgence in my neck of the woods. So while things aren't like, locking down super hardcore right now, I've sort of stopped going out and doing things. So like I would normally go to the farmer's market on Saturdays, and we've kind of stopped doing that now. And yeah, so I haven't been enjoying much of London because I basically can't leave my apartment for the most part. And Stephen Miller got COVID-19. I'm having a hard time not feeling good about that. Didn't Stephen Miller is like the guy who runs the concentration camps, isn't he? So like, fuck him. I hope he dies. Yeah. COVID is secretly Antifa. He runs the concentration camps. He runs the what? He's the person who like oversaw like the whole program of like ICE concentration camps for stealing children from their parents and stuff. So fuck him. I hope he dies. I hope the super spreader event wipes out the whole Republican Party. So many people have died. Hell, if they could do the Democrats while they're at it, I wouldn't complain. All right, it's the Tuesday Night Show with the live chat and discourse and lady. Man, this music is so good. Have you ever played White Wolf Publishing games such as Vampire Requiem or Masquerade? No, I have not. I have not played. Which historical figure is most mediocre in your opinion? The biggest one that comes to mind is Christopher Columbus. The guy was a fucking psychopath, but like there was like everybody who thinks that there was some sort of genius to him is not true. He actually got his commission to do his Atlantic trip because he assumed the world was smaller than it was, which so he was wrong while everybody else was right, and so whatever. Christopher Columbus is like a dumbass who accidentally became one of the most significant human beings in human history. So that's fun. Trump's all gacked up on steroids, just made a decision that makes no sense from his perspective. Yeah, he kind of like is really like, he's saying a bunch of crazy shit that's basically going to lead to the election, losing the election. Do you ever see yourself doing a video explaining historical materialism? I came very close to doing one once. The thing though, Ryan, is like it's a thing I'd like to do, and maybe I will. But like, my whole thing is that if you want to tell a good like history, like if you want to make a video on YouTube that performs well on a certain topic, it has to not only be on topics that are important. If I just did videos just talking about history stuff that like things that just happened without any like, thought into narrative and making sure that there's some sort of story that somebody can have an emotional through line with, it's not going to do well. And historical materialism, while like really important for understanding history, especially like political economy and history, feels more like a thing that I would talk about while trying to explain something else than doing a video about that in and of itself. I get a lot of requests to make videos about different things, and I can definitely think of some interesting topics where explaining historical materialism and talking about it would be important for the story. But and so like that's the way I thought about it, and so I eventually did toss out the idea of doing a like just a straight up historical materialism video. But like I'm gonna do like a labor history video at some point, a labor history of the United States, and that's gonna need that's gonna need to talk about historical materialism. So yeah, we'll get there. History's big, and I don't plan on stopping the channel anytime soon. So I've got a lot to chew through. Athletes eat like 2,000 kilojoules, something like that. Like didn't like I'm trying to think, like I'm pretty sure like Michael Phelps or something like that eats almost like 9 to 10,000 calories a day. When I was doing my first master's degree, one of my friends was an Olympic athlete, and she ate so much goddamn food. Like, the government gave her and the team that she was on, like, almost $200 a week for each person just to buy food. Like, they ate so much fucking stuff because they were working out basically as a full-time job. So, yeah. And when you're like a soldier, like when you're a Roman soldier, like before the days of trains, before the days of cars, before the days of anything, you were walking almost all day long. And you can imagine that, like, you know, probably walking like maybe like 20, 30 kilometers in a day, you're going to burn a lot of fucking calories. And so 3,000 calories is actually fairly low for that. So I can imagine that they would have to supplement it with the occasional stealing and pillaging in order to not, like, you know, waste away on only 3,000 calories a day. Because, like, the average man, like the average human male, consumes about 2,200 calories a day just, like, to keep their body temperature up and their heart beating. And so that gives you about 800 extra calories after that, which you could imagine could, and that 2,200 also changes drastically if, say, you're in the cold or something like that. Like, if you're in a cold situation, you're going to burn even more calories. And so, yeah, if you're, like, out, like, marching around and stuff like that, you could easily consume 9,000 calories in a day. Easily. And I know that, like one example, because, like, one that's interesting to talk about is people who go to the Arctic and do, like, Arctic expeditions, like where they go hiking and, like, trudging through the snow and stuff like that. Because the only food that they can think of that's calorie dense enough to keep on their person and is still light enough that they can travel is sticks of butter. And so, like, people who go on, like, Arctic expeditions have to just, like, eat, like, straight butter, because just to keep their body, like, just burning the ovens to keep them from basically freezing to death. So, yeah. 3,000 calorie diet sounds like a lot from, like, our perspective today, but it's not that much. How loyal do you think Roberts and Gorsuch are? Everyone worries about Trump getting the Supreme Court to stop the mail-in count, but I think the way they rule on LGBTQ workers' rights shows they won't always just rule however the GOP wants if it's just too indefensible. I hope you're right. I am not optimistic, but I hope you're right. Alright, I recently found out that because they mostly operate in international waters, cruise ships typically have awful working conditions. Does not surprise me. Like, the staff aren't even allowed to leave their cabins, so the passengers won't have to interact with them. Does that make going on a cruise ship really unethical, or is it no different from buying switchblades made by borderline slaves in China? I feel like the proximity makes it worse somehow. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's not great. I mean, if that's the only thing you need to, like, not go on a cruise, like, there are multiple reasons. Like, going on like, cruise ships are extremely environmentally destructive and basically petri dishes. Like, people get sick so often on cruises. Like, there's so many reasons to just never go on a cruise. It's bad. How did Mexico deal with the American Civil War? As far as I know, they weren't super involved, but I can check real quick. Because, like, I don't know if Mexico was Mexico going through. What was Mexico doing in the 1860s anyway? So that would be. So it was back when it was like a democracy. Okay, so it was after Santa Anna. So I think that at this point in history, Mexico was in like a little bit of like kind of in a political situation in and of itself. Yeah, because like because there was the War of Reform. And then, oh yeah, fucking okay, yeah. During the during the Empire times. That was it. Okay. So, yeah. I don't know. Yes, it sounds like in Mexico at the time they were kind of dealing with the fact that France was invading and conquering them. So that kind of sums things up, doesn't it? All right. I recently found out that because they operate into... Oh yeah, I already answered this one. Don't. Rum for sailors because this is before you could keep standing water germ-free. Yeah. It was very, like, diluted rum. It's not, like, exactly, like, not the rum that we would have today. I put something in your reactor right now and would love for you to look at it. I'll look at it eventually. But, you know, that's what Friday's for. The Roman army didn't have group messes. Soldiers were just given grain, meat, and greens and told to prepare it themselves. I wonder if that might have avoided some of the problems you were talking about where the communal kettles would get infected with crap. Maybe. I didn't say that the kettles would get infected. They would get abandoned if they were moving fast. Yeah. So for the most part, they were also like you know, civil, like Roman soldiers probably still were probably in the similar boat. They had to make all their own meals, just like but they probably got together and communally cooked stuff too. So it's very much like being a Civil War soldier in that sense. Let's see. Could the mainstream media cover up a pandemic today like they did in 1918, 1919? Or would social media make that impossible? I mean, they're trying their best, aren't they? Right now. I'm from Italy. You have to pronounce my name how it's written. Penso Tozzanese. There you go. The way that's pronounced in Italy is the sound of wolf whistling at a woman while riding on the back of a Vespa. Wasn't there an anti-masker thing in London recently? I don't remember, actually. If there was, I was not involved. I'll tell you that. Suppose the Democrats found themselves in the position the Republicans were in 2016. Would you want them to stop a Republican president from picking a right-wing judge? I mean, they could try. Like, the thing is, the difference between 2016 and 2020, in honesty, like, without all the norms and rules and stuff, is just that in 2016, Obama didn't have the votes. And in 2020, Trump does have the votes. So he's going to do it. Like, in my mind, like, in today's, like, partisan, like, the way that partisan politics works in America now, you know, because of sort of the rot built up over the decades that has been kicked in by Mitch McConnell. The way that the Senate works now, basically, you can't approve a Supreme Court justice unless the party controls both the White House and the Senate. That's my guess. So that's just going to be the norm from now on. Is there's, you're not going to be able to, you're not going like you can't put in a Supreme Court justice unless one party controls both what's it called, both chambers or both branches. Tristan already caught up with the chat. That was fast. Oh no. No, I don't want Bernie to die of COVID. Bernie's not a Democrat, so he won't get it. That's the trick. What is your what's you favorite meme? Ooh. What is me favorite meme? What is me favorite meme? Good question. Let's see. Let's think about that one for a second. I used to really like the Galaxy Brain meme. You know what? My favorite is that one meme that you use whenever somebody says something where you can tell that the person who said it thought that they were very intelligent and that the, what's it called? But, like, was actually incredibly dumb. And it's that, like, series of memes where it's, like, the guy whose brain is so big that, like, he can do something. Like, the one where his brain is so big that it is a chess table and he's playing against his own brain that is made out of, that is, like, a human-shaped. Or him riding on the back of an elephant that is his brain. Or more recently, in a bed that is his own brain having sex with a woman who is also his own brain. That kind of stuff. I think that one's funny. Australia, we have gotten a second wave pretty much. What are the benefits? One of the benefits, how is Canada doing with COVID? I mean, I think Canada's doing better than most countries. Like, the state was, or the province was taking, like, the country was taking it seriously for a while, and we put in a pretty good program that was sort of like an extended unemployment benefit program called CHIRB that sort of kept people on life support if they lost their jobs. So that was decent, and then different provinces handled it in different ways because some provinces got very few cases, if any, and some got, like, a lot. And, like, Quebec was really bad for a while, and Ontario was really bad for a while. But then things started to calm down. It went really well. But then we started reopening, and then we started sending people into... what's it called? There's someone who wants a link to the Discord. They started sending people back to school. And that resulted in another big spike. And the problem right now, I don't know what's going on in other provinces, but in Ontario, this big spike has basically resulted in a Trump, or not Trump, but close enough, with Doug Ford, the premier, basically refusing to reopen the, what's it called, to sort of re-put on the, the lockdown, so to not put the city back in, or not put the province back in lockdown. And because of that, we're now, like, in these weird situations where people are told they're not supposed to have, like, family over for Thanksgiving, which is this weekend, and they're being told that, like, keep your group sizes no more than 10 people, but at the exact same time, they're sending like kids to school into like classes that are still like 30 plus in size. And so like it's being very incongruous how, because they don't want to shut down certain things, but they want to give you advice and then force people to not listen to said advice, and it's very contradictory, and that's resulting in cases going up again. So there's that. What really happened at Roanoke? Nobody knows for sure. It is still a bit of a mystery, but I think the most likely theory that I have been hearing is that they had a disaster of some kind, like either like a hurricane or some sort of like bad weather or like a really bad snowstorm or something that caused them to basically abandon the village. And it's likely that they, to survive, started living with local indigenous people and sort of blended in by the time, like a whole generation had passed by the time they came back. And sort of they just amalgamated into the local indigenous tribes. You got a copy of People's History of the United States in the mail today. Good stuff. I decided to impose a rule on myself. I'm only allowed to put one link in the reactor after somebody else posts a link. Is that a good idea? Sure. No, it's fine. Is anyone here on Mastodon? I do not have Mastodon. Let's see. Yesterday, you and Mia brought up autistic conversion therapy and how it's more acceptable than gay conversion therapy. Do you think it's because autism, unlike homosexuality, is still seen as an unambiguous negative thing to be? Also, I wonder if it has anything to do with LGBTQ people being better at self-advocacy. I'm not sure with the self-advocacy part, but yeah, I do think that we still have sort of a medicalization aspect of a lot of neurodivergence that is not good. Sort of a problem we have with disability in general. So I can get this Twitch bot taken care of. Let's see. Here we go. Get you a nice little band. There we go. All taken care of. Okay. Hunter-gatherers eat a ton of food due to the methods they use to get food, like persistence hunting, which is insane how long they ran. Yeah. It's true. And sometimes if you're like a hunting society, you can go without food for days. So like once you actually do get a chance to eat, you like fucking gorge. So there's no place where you can store meat. Not really, unless you try to dry it out. And it can sometimes be like, you know, a long time before you see food again. So very often they just eat a fuck ton of food when they catch an animal, and then they sort of store it as fat. Which is, you know, I guess the way we evolved to eat food. It's supposed to be why intermittent fasting is supposed to be good for you. Cruise ships are extremely environmentally unfriendly, but are there enough of them for the world for to really affect stuff? Like, if you Thanos clicked every cruise ship, would it make a dent in climate change? Maybe not, but there's definitely not something that we should just be, like, dumping money into, that's for sure. I want to see World War III happen. How would that best happen? I mean, I would not want to see World War III happen because there probably wouldn't be a human race at the end of it. But it does seem like we're heading towards that at that max speed, so I don't think you need to do a whole lot. It's already well on its way. Let's see. When I was in middle school, 2002 to 2006, that was when I was in high school, there was the idea that telling kids they have autism was like labeling them and thus a bad idea. The head of special ed there once told me that she had to try and work with and help some kids without helping them because they're autistic because their parents refuse to let her. Is that abusive? Should kids have the right to know their medical situation? Yeah. Yeah, I think that we had some pretty fucked up ideas about how to deal with specifically learning disabilities like that a lot. It happened with ADHD too. I had my entire childhood basically bouncing between whether or not they thought I had ADHD based on what was in vogue at the time and what the personal thoughts were of the people who were at different schools I went to. And so I went between being somebody with ADHD and just being a shitty kid over and over again. That was sort of my life. So that was fun. I had a child psychiatrist basically say that I was a shitty person because I refused. I was choosing to not do schoolwork. That was super great. This is why I'm so mentally healthy today, obviously. Are you excited for Baldur's Gate 3? Maybe. I'm significantly less excited than I was a few months ago. I've been hearing that this early access that came out today for Baldur's Gate 3 is really early access. It's very buggy and very very rough shape. So I'm probably not going to play it until it comes out for real. And hopefully it gets better. I read one review that kind of complains about the storyline and says the characters aren't very good, but who knows? I don't know if that's just one dude's opinion. We'll see what happens when the game actually comes out and people do the actual grown-up reviews of these games. Do you ever wonder that there could be Karens all around you? There's no way of knowing unless they attacked you. Have Karens taken over societal fear of the stranger who is potentially a serial killer? I don't know. Karens have become just a word for sometimes it's been a word for a woman who says something I don't like. But I mean, legit, the people who call the police on black people for existing and stuff like that fucking suck. And I don't think we're doing full on serial killer stranger danger. Not yet. I was diagnosed as autistic when I was 6 and was told about it when I was 11 or 12 and I was mature enough to understand it. Okay. Which party do polling errors tend to favor? That's very dependent on methodology and things like that. There's a lot of every group that does polls has their own methodology and their own sort of roster of people they call and ways they conduct the polls and stuff like that. And the results can be skewed in complex ways. That's why tending to aggregate them is a smarter idea because there's things a lot of phone polls tend to use landlines and older people tend to have landlines, and so that tends to support conservative candidates. Or I think there was an issue in America or in the UK where there was if you have to say it in person who you're voting for, you have to say it on the phone, that people are more embarrassed to say that they're voting conservative, and so they say that they're voting Labour, and then they vote conservative anyway. And they're sort of like, I guess it's like almost a guilty thing to vote conservative in the UK or something. I don't know. I don't exactly know the attitude of that, but there's been some evidence that there's something like that with voting for Trump too, because they like don't want to be judged or something. And some polls are done by by certain organizations that have a sort of bias one way or the other, or they lean one way or the other. So like, say if you're like there's some like Rasmussen, I think it's like that, tends to lean Republican in the way that they poll for some reason, and like there's various things, but it's complicated, I guess I should say. Are you going to do a video on Jainism? I was planning on it at one point, but then sort of Kogito already did it. The thing is, like, I love doing that religion series, and now Kogito has sort of taken it over, and now I have to think about how to do videos about religions that isn't just doing what Kogito did. So I think I had a conversation with him once that he's going to go for more mainstream religions, and I'm going to focus more on niche religions. But there's already a Kogito video on Jainism, so I can't really do that. I'm trying to think, what religion videos do I have that I actually wanted to do? I want to do one on the Ghost Dance movement. That was fun. That would be fun. And I want to do a sequel to the Mormon video that's about sort of the secular history of the Mormons. And yeah, I don't have any more religion videos on the horizon. I should, because they actually do very well. So maybe I should reconsider that at some point. But yeah, because like my religion series is actually pretty popular, so I should probably do more of those. But it's hard because Kogito sort of took the niche away. So between Kogito and Religion for Breakfast, I basically have like the market's kind of cornered in a way that it wasn't back in the past, so I can't really like. You know how a teen can run away from home, get taken in by a pimp, forced to sell themselves, and then much later, when they're in too deep, they might help the pimp recruit other kids in the same situation. Hey, Harley SA7177, thank you for following. Should we think of LGBTQ plus people who work in conversion therapy as being in a fundamentally similar situation? That was my thought after what you and Mia said yesterday. That is, I guess, one way to think about it. It's not a perfect comparison, but it's okay. If the pandemic happened in the golden age of 1947 to 73, would the response have been better for most countries? I think so, because people would have listened to the government more. You wouldn't have had more weirdos who refuse to wear masks, that's for sure, I think. A while back, I watched a detective show where the serial killer turned out to be a trans woman. If you're going to play into that shitty trope, is it better or worse you hire an actual trans actress, which they did not? I mean, I guess. Better than not, but, you know, it's lazy. It's lazy storytelling, and it hurts depictions of trans people. Not that trans people can't be serial killers, but it's kind of been done quite a bit. You definitely should. I definitely follow you. I don't know what that's a reference to. It's been a little bit. It's been 10 minutes since then. Is it true that some content creators believe it's okay to have a certain percentage of your audience be parasocial in nature because their neediness and affection for the content creator raises their self-esteem? I don't know. Like, the parasocial relationships aren't ubiquitously bad, but they can be manipulative. And the problem in my mind is that what happens is somebody makes that kind of connection, and that while it helps their self-esteem, it in the end is a way for them to use their devotion to make money, whether through their views for, advertisements, or when they do a thing to have people open their wallets and give them stuff. One example that comes to mind all the time, even though I like it myself, is Critical Role, where they do a lot of stuff to try and push the parasocial relationship, and it sort of results in a lot of times their content, they are pushing so much merchandise, so you can tell that they're making a lot of money off of it, and it feels a little dirty. But also, people like having that sort of parasocial relationship. It's why podcasts are so popular. It's why radio shows were so popular. So that's a thing. So that's where I'll take that. Can society have the idea that sometimes differently abled and neurodivergent? Oh, hey, thank you.
Hello, TROBSTAN.
Hey, Matt, thank you for subscribing for 13 months. Holy moly. And yes, hello, Trobstan. Hello. Hello, friend. Thank you for subscribing on my internet channel. Don't touch that dial. So can society have sometimes differently able people and neurodivergent, sometimes being special assistants, without the idea that those things are bad? Yeah, there's some evidence that this did happen. For example, there's probably some evidence that there's evidence that it's likely anyway that some foraging societies, like hunter-gatherers or whatever you want to call them, had a sort of specific reverence for people who had certain disabilities. And there is a history of sometimes certain forms of disability can have sort of a religious reverence attached to them, and sometimes a sign that it sometimes gives them actually special treatment in a kind of positive way. So it's not really the real distaste. I don't know. It has happened in the past, so it is possible. The what's it called? The video that was on. What was that? What's the channel called? It's a really great channel. Trey Explains. Trey Explains did a video on disability in pre-modern times, or prehistoric times. That's actually really good and talks about it, and it's really interesting. I really like that video. It's one of my favorite YouTube videos. Is there any evidence for certain Mesoamerican gods being based on hurricanes? I wonder if the Maya ever thought of hurricanes as the wrath of the gods. It is possible. I don't know too much about Yucatec society and Yucatec religion, but they definitely had gods of different directions and winds and stuff like that. So I could totally see hurricanes being part of their religious thing. Most of the Mesoamerican religious world that I know about is more in central Mexico, where hurricanes are less of a thing, and their gods definitely have impacts on their society because of the El Nino effect and the propensity for it to go through periods of drought versus flooding, which led to a lot of the human sacrifice stuff. Why are puppies so cute? It's a mystery we'll never answer. I'm sorry. If you want a real reason, it's because our brain is hardwired to protect babies, and dogs kind of look like babies. Is touching yourself a negative act itself from your touching yourself right now? Well played. Well played. This ethnic identity of Europe by the 19th century is considered high-level religion in contrast to Europe. Okay, whatever. In Australian history, their trans man during early 20th century who was outed to his wife and had to kill her to protect himself from being incarcerated into an institution for sexual deviancy. Well, that's fucked up. Especially because like there's evidence that indigenous Australian people actually had transgendered people were part of the culture of some areas of indigenous Australia. Several years ago, I saw an interview with the anthropologist suggest that dogs are a form of parasite because they live off of us but don't really provide anything. Is that discounting the value of emotional support? Sure, but dogs also have very practical uses. People do stuff with dogs all the time. The fact that we have like support animals and like we have dogs that take care of the blind. We have dogs that look for bombs, that look for bodies and wreckage. That dogs do a lot of work. They are very good animals, and they are so good at being good boys and girls. And so, fuck that guy. The only parasite that we have in our society is landlords. And maybe rich people. Y'all see the latest video from the Gravel Institute? That was a pretty good one. I did see it. It's good. Think it'd be a good idea to only delete my links at the end of the month and letting other people roll over? I don't know. We'll see where we are at the end of the month, but I think it's also just so that we can keep people like keeping the content fresh. Like it's so that we're not watching like news stories or videos that came out like a million years ago, so that the show is at least kept up to date in some fashion. Do you think that it's taking longer for youths and young adults to find a solid identity because of alienation, internet misinformation, and echo chambers? What would young parents do to ensure their kids have healthy identity development? I mean, I think that in many ways, the reason why, like, for example, we don't have a lot of those rituals of, like, you're an adult now. You did the adult ritual. You are now adult. Like, a lot of that is because, like, we went through the stages of life as children, or, like, in the past a lot faster. And things aren't as solid anymore. So, I don't think it's the internet's fault. It's, like, modernity's fault. And I don't think that we need to reinstate it. We just need to figure out how to live with it. Do you think there are some lies we need to believe, by and large, at least, in order for society to function? Maybe. I did kind of mention a few weeks ago that even if it isn't true, we should believe that all people are redeemable, which I think, you know, maybe isn't true, but it's definitely something that we should constantly be believing. I'm an ecologist, and I used the term correctly as they didn't harm humans, but humans didn't benefit either way. What? I thought they did benefit. A commensalist. Is it true Trump didn't COVID, instead had a boob reduction in order to gather more berries? Oh boy. What an interesting thing. Hurricanes are named after Huracan, the Mayan god of wind, fire, and storms. Well, that pretty much puts it together, doesn't it? I also like Trey the Explainer's video on homosexuality, Ainu, and the evolution of warfare, which was an interesting video. Yeah, Trey Explainer is good at making YouTube videos, it turns out. Oh. Do you think that there will be a time where international archaeological works can be done in Cuba to discover more about who the indigenous people were and how they got there? And the potential for rocks being found in the ocean similar to those we found in the British Channel? Yeah, possibly. Probably has already happened. Like, the United States is the only country that's got that embargo on Cuba. Could you amend that to all people are potentially redeemable? Sure. The reason I think that that is like a useful lie that society should believe, even if it isn't true, is that I don't like what it says if we go the other way. It implies a culture that can give up on people, and we are never in a place where we can, like, you know, where we can make those decisions, in my opinion. Is it me, or is Cypher becoming more left-wing by his Twitter feed? No idea. I don't know what Cypher's been up to these days. I mean, he was already, like, kind of left-wing. He was just kind of a regular dude, bro. He was, like, always, like, a progressive from my, like, conversations with him. I guess is maybe just coming out more in his work? I don't know. With that, though, I'm actually caught up with the chat, and I'm only an hour in. What the fuck? Thank you for following, Digital Bean. Many thank you. Many thanks. Oh. And thank you, Thraldrek, for following. Welcome to the Orc Gang yourself. So many political ideologies involve using the state to achieve their goals. How can we convince vanguard lefties and such that dismantling the state is the best way to achieve a more egalitarian society? For the state is detrimental to such a society. I guess I would just point to them and say, like, hey, can you think of a society where somebody was given power and they used it responsibly and didn't use it to take away people's stuff? And thank you for the bits, Digital Bean. Thank you, much appreciated. I guess this stream was worth $1 to you. That's many kind. Thank you. So yeah. That's sort of my take on that. Is that, like, very often, you, like, for people like lefties in general probably aren't very big into, like, hierarchy and dominance, unless it's the state. And so I would kind of point out very much, like, I can't really think of a time where a person was given power and used it 100% responsibly, and that maybe if power was horizontal enough that no individual person was able to, like, have, like, kind of a runaway snowball power, that would be a better way to run society, because it would be a lot more stable and a lot more, like, you know, egalitarian. But I don't know. There's a lot of some like super vanguard lefties really don't believe that in general people are smart enough to govern themselves, or they don't believe in the inherent positivity of, like, freedom. And at that point, I don't really know what to say. Where do you get your news from? My typical news, like my news digest, is a lot of like reading random shit I find. Typically looking for stuff that's from like, grown up media institutions and just sort of being aware of their positions. Like I'm not like a tanky who thinks that like that thinks that like all media is just a CIA operation to fuck over people. But like knowing that media performs and functions in a certain way, reading manufacturing consent, you'll know that news media is constructed in a certain way to fit a certain narrative. But as a historian, I'm very used to reading stuff from people who are very obviously biased and very obviously have a position, and sort of going with that. Because unfortunately, a lot of the shittiest news sources, like the ones that are corporate and stuff like that, have the resources to do a lot of important research in journalism and stuff like that. So there's that. Democracy Now! Though is like the best like one that I can think of at least that's my take. It's a decent. I watch the thing every morning to get like sort of an idea of what's been going on when I haven't really been paying attention. But other than that, there's some journalists on Twitter like Ken Klippenstein and such that I follow because they're usually pretty good at stuff, this kind of stuff, that kind of work. I do like the people who think that that any media organization that says the Uyghur genocide is happening is run by the CIA, when I was like, oh yeah, Democracy Now! Well-known CIA operation. How does Cypher feel about the imperialist war he fought in? I've never hung out with him in like a serious enough get-together where we can talk about shit like that. It's kind of a weird subject that it's not a subject I would be like very willing to breach. Usually only time I usually see Cypher is at VidCon and stuff like that. If you want, I could ask something which makes you and I start arguing over minutia. Oh boy. Can we get a step forward history where you make a totally real predictions about the future? I mean, Tristan Won't Shut Up kind of is like that, but for the most part, like I was actually thinking of making a futurism channel, like as a second channel at some point, like a long, long time ago. Like this is back in like 2016, 2017. But that was a different time, and I think I like where I'm at now. Do you think the ACLU is getting ready to launch a class action lawsuit if Trump declares victory on election night, but 2 weeks later mailed votes makes Biden the winner and Trump dismisses it? I wouldn't be surprised. The ACLU is definitely an organization that would try to get involved in such a situation and have the resources to actually fight that fight. So that's... And like, as somebody I was a member of, or I worked for the kind of Canadian equivalent of the ACLU, they definitely have like kind of legislative goals that they have in advance. And like when these kinds of things come up, they're ready to they are usually, as long as their caseload isn't completely overloaded, which the ACLU is pretty big, so I don't think that's a problem, that they'd be ready to take on like a huge thing like that. Thoughts on Kellyanne Conway's daughter situation? That's a good question. Oh, that's a good one. So, if anyone doesn't know, Claudia Conway, who is... Claudia Conway is the 15-year-old daughter of Kellyanne Conway, who has a pretty popular TikTok account and very notoriously hates Trump and is, like, super progressive. Hey, popular wannabe, thank you for following. Welcome to Orc Gang. And right now, she got in shit because when everyone was trying to talk about just how alive and healthy Trump is, she, like, apparently reported on, like, overhearing her mom's conversation saying that he's, like, actually in pretty bad condition, and they're sort of, like, fighting to keep him alive right now. In which case, like, I actually believe her on that front just because of, like, all the other evidence and sort of how sketchy everybody's being. But then also, Kellyanne Conway, like, her mom got coronavirus and tested positive and didn't tell her family, and now Claudia has it herself, and now she's really sick, which I think fucking sucks. I don't know, it sounds like Claudia Conway fucking rules. That's my take. And I hope that she gets better soon, because she's probably done more for... There's so many, like, stenographer journalists these days in, like, corporate media where they just write down everything that the government tells them and don't do any investigation on their own. And Claudia Conway just, like, gave, like, one of the most important leaks of this whole situation, while, like, all these, like, CNN journalists were just sitting on their thumbs because they don't want to lose their White House press pass. I get my news from RT and Facebook. Oofa doofa. Poor guy. Some pretty sketchy news sources there. And yeah, also, Claudia's trying to become an emancipated minor because it seems that her parents might be abusive. And be nice to, what's it called? Be nice to see her free. Have you read Howard Zinn, and if so, what are your thoughts on his work? I like Howard Zinn quite a bit. He's definitely a really good, like, baby's first reinterpretation of the past, and, like, America is bad, actually. He's got some issues. Many American historians will point out that he's got some issues in his analysis. Specifically, the lack of women's in his work. He didn't do a whole lot of, like, intersectional analyses of gender and stuff like that. He focused mostly on class, which leads his thing to be a little bit reductionist. But for the most part, like, it's a good like, Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States is like a pretty good first work to understand American history. That's not just like the hagiography of the public school system. What do you think of Canubis, Emperor Tigerstar, Casual Historian, and Cynical Historian? Well, I don't know who Casual Historian is. Cynical Historian is good. Cypher's a friend of mine, and he's a pretty good, like, he's the most academic, I think, of all of the history YouTubers. He's definitely the one who I think does the most, like, academic high-level research for his work. Emperor Tigerstar is fun. Like, his channel's decent. I'm not really into maps. That's not like my thing. But like, as a person, I like Emperor Tigerstar quite a bit. We talk a little bit back and forth on like Discord and stuff like that. So there's that. Canubis is a very interesting young man. I've met him a couple of times. He goes to VidCon every year. But I've never really had an in-depth conversation with him, and I don't really watch his stuff, so I don't really know too much about his work, so... These days, do you think step forward history would be anything other than a post-nuclear ecology? I don't think nuclear war is the thing that's going to take us out, to be honest. I feel like we're much more likely... I think climate change is more going to be the thing that causes the major collapse of human society than nuclear war right now. Everyone has the potential to redeemable. Do you think that VP Harris has potential to push for positive incremental change? I want to believe that the childhood in her has dreams of positive change. Imagine she pushes to reducing credit card rates, reducing student loan debt, and providing preschool and working parents. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen, but prove me wrong. If she went that way, I'd be so happy, but I mean, Tristan, I learned recently that one of my friend's mom actually watches you, and she's like really into conspiracy theories and stuff. You know, jet fuel can't melt steel beams. How does this make you feel? I mean, like, I don't have personal ownership over my audience, obviously. Um, I have my audience is like the size of a reasonably sized city at this point. Like, I have over 70,000 subscribers, so it's kind of hard to like think too much, like taking responsibility for any individual one. But like, what I will say is that if she watches my stuff, she hasn't watched a lot of my stuff because I have made several videos that have been pretty like, you know, critical analysis of conspiracy theories and shown why they aren't true. So unless she just like missed all of those videos, I don't know what's going on there. It is weird to just like find out that somebody watches my content that I like. Like, I met some guy once at a bar that that was like friends with a friend, and it turned out that he had been watching my channel apropos of nothing. Like, he didn't know like actual recommendation or anything like that. He just found my stuff, and I was like, oh shit, that's cool. And every once in a while, it hasn't happened since COVID, but every once in a while I'll run into somebody on the street who recognizes me, and that was pretty cool. I would love to find some more anarchists in the state where I live in Australia. How hard was it for you to find anarchist people in your province and in Canada? Mostly, like, to me, I know a few like London, Ontario area anarchists because I went to an anarchist book fair in 2013 or 2014 or 2013. I think it was 2013. It was a long, long time ago. And so I met the people at that thing. So, like, honestly, it was that easy. But that's just where I am, and I live like in a, you know, I live in a college town, so maybe there's it's more likely to happen. She wants to be emancipated and fucking hates Trump and her parents. Yep. Remember, her dad is a conservative and also doesn't like Trump. I'm upset because, long story, I almost had the chance to debate Laura Ingraham for 20 minutes. But my mom, who was organizing it, canceled after I said I would challenge her points. Oh, that sucks. What's her TikTok handle? I'm going to go find out for you. I'm going to open up my TikTok right now. Claudia Conway's TikTok is just Claudia M. Conway. But if you just search Claudia Conway on TikTok, she'll show up. She's very popular, and she's verified. I can't think of any new questions. What's wrong with me? I guess you had more questions, but then you answered them yourself, and you didn't need me. You have graduated past the need for me to answer your questions. Howard Zinn canceled? Question mark, question mark, question mark? No, like, what's it called? He was, like, not super great on, like, women's history and stuff like that. But it's not like that's the end of the world. Like, Howard Zinn was a historian of his period. Like, his book is, like, A People's History of the United States is, like, a super important work in the history of American, like, historiography. But, like, he was a product of the period that he wrote his book in. And, you know, women's studies and women's history and gender studies and stuff like that wasn't quite at the point where it is today when he wrote it. Like, and most people I know, like, even people who are like, you know, even people who are like very left-wing historians in American history, like I had professors and stuff like that who were very left-wing American history professors, and like even their take on Howard Zinn was like, yeah, he was like not super great on gender, but like you can't like deny how important people's history of the United States was. Do you think Bernie would... Okay. Yesterday I asked, do you think Bernie would have committed to packing the court by now? What about Warren? Oh, Warren wouldn't have done it. Warren was like so anti-confrontational that it would be almost as bad as what's going on with Biden now. What if climate change creates nuclear war? Fair. Is collapse of society really a bad thing right now? I mean, I like having water and electricity and a reasonable lifespan and healthcare. I would really hate for that all to fall apart. That would suck. Damn, boy, he's thick. Damn, boy. Damn, boy, he's thick! That's a thick-ass boy! It's a TikTok thing. Okay. Let's see. I think we would get a Bronze Age collapse too, or end like the Khmer Rouge of the Mayans. Well, I think you mean the Khmer Empire. The Khmer Rouge didn't end because of climate change, I think. How do you feel about Biden basically saying, maybe I'll pack the court, maybe I won't, who knows? A lot of the libs I follow are coming in their trousers over the fact that... Alright, I have to imagine this because I remember that 255, you're British. So I have to be like... A lot of libs I follow are coming in their trousers over the fact that he just hasn't just unambiguously said no, never. Yeah, I mean, that's the closest thing you can get to Joe Biden actually, like, saying, like, giving support to a thing that he wants to do. Because, like, Joe Biden's entire campaign has been, like, refusing to commit to literally anything so that he can just be this, like, warm, gooey centrist that people can read in whatever positions they want to read into it. How did I meet Brain Goo? He reached out to me. I think from how the story goes is his he was getting into YouTube. He had made a few videos. ThoughtSlam was really small at this point. And he had listened to a podcast that I ran back in like 2016, 2017 called YouTubers United, which was sort of a YouTube advice podcast that wasn't trying to sell you something. And he listened to that podcast, and apparently it was he got a lot out of it. And found out, I think, like, what's it called? I think his partner said to him, like, hey, you should go and, like, try and talk to this guy since he's around. And he was like, oh, but he's in London, so it wouldn't happen. But then he found out that I lived in Toronto, and so he sent me a DM on Twitter and said, like, hey, can we get some coffee? And we got coffee, and then we got shit-faced one time, and, you know, one thing led to another. He joined my D&D game, and now, like, we've been, you know, buddies for years now. Did you see my comments about getting a copy of People's History? Yes. Good stuff. It is a good book. Have you ever successfully convinced a libertarian of anarchism, by extension anarcho-communism? If I have, they haven't told me. I don't know who... I only ever so often get, like, comments from people who say that they were one thing and then became another thing because of my work. It's a very happy moment every time I hear it, but I mostly hear that I helped people walk back from, like, the kind of, like, path to the far right, which is great. That always makes me happy. Like, yeah, more often and hopefully it's because one of the number one things I like to get across, especially in my streams and stuff like that, is that you can be like a white, schlubby, heterosexual, cisgendered man and not be threatened by social justice and progress because it's good for everybody and it's not a zero-sum game. More rights for people is more rights for everybody. And that's sort of like hopefully the thing I want to get across, that you can be a guy who likes nerdy shit and stuff and not think that, like, the women's are taking away your video games or whatever. Is it possible that, similar to the butterfly effect, certain uncertain environmental changes due to climate change led to the creation of COVID? And do you think that climate change would lead to more deadly viruses? For example, the permafrost in the Arctic tundra melts. It could release prehistoric viruses we have no immunity to. Yeah, I mean, there's not a butterfly effect. There's some pretty, like, some people have pretty much pointed out that, like, COVID, it does have a climate change aspect to it, which is the sense that, like, I'm trying to remember what it is, but, like, COVID and climate change. But, like, things like pandemics and stuff like that are more likely to result in, are more likely to happen because of climate change. We'll see where that goes, but okay. So the last Lower Decks episode is recreating people on the holodeck so you can kill them. Any difference to recreating people on the holodeck so you can have sex with them? I mean, yeah, it is a little sketchy what happened, that's for sure. If it wasn't done in like a cartoon comedy show, it would be pretty... That's like the first thing you would notice. Like, if that exact thing happened, if that exact concept happened on like a live-action Star Trek show, that would be fucking horrific and everybody would have issues with it. It was the fact that it was a half-hour, like, cartoon comedy show that they were able to get away with it, in my opinion. The Green Party leader is now mad that she isn't being handed your old electoral district in Toronto. I heard that. Yeah. I did hear that. An assistant manager in my Amazon warehouse said that only homogenous countries have progressive laws like free healthcare and education because they don't have to fear the other. When he said that because of racial tensions in the U.S., the country will always have a dog-eat-dog zeitgeist. What are your thoughts? He brought up examples of Japan, Norway, and Iceland. I don't know how to answer that. I don't see why... Like, it's basically just having, like, a race-centered view of what, of how societies work. Like, for example, one that you might be able to say is there's this country called Canada that is one of the most diverse countries on Earth. And it has healthcare. There's, like, New Zealand. There is, like there are several countries that have progressive laws and free healthcare and education. And also, like, even countries in Europe, like Germany is, like, becoming more diverse, and it has healthcare, it has education, blah, blah, blah. So it seems like they're just cherry-picking answers, or cherry-picking things to basically say that there should only be whites in Canada or in America or something? I don't know. I think he's a low-key racist and reminding about how the alt-right wants free programs only for white people. Fun. Fun, fun, fun. Sounds like a fun place that you work. My sister works in an Amazon warehouse, so I feel for you. They give you the fucking machine where you have to pack boxes within a certain timeline. You have, like, so much money or so much time for each thing. And you basically, like when you work in an Amazon warehouse, they give you a fucking machine. And, like, you have to go and pick stuff for all the boxes. And, like, it actually, like, algorithmically sorts it so that you know exactly where you need to go to pick up the things. And so it makes it so you're basically nonstop walking the whole day. It's a fucking brutal job. Here's hoping Brian Chang wins the seat. I know, that'd be so sweet. I wonder if he still follows me. Brian, I actually, like, volunteered for Brian Chang. Yeah, he's still following me on Twitter. That rules. His partner is a real, like, fun shit poster. And he also follows me on Twitter. And like, what's it called? When I was memeing hard for Sanders during the during the primaries, he found it pretty funny. So I'm pretty happy to see Brian running for Toronto Centre, and hopefully he'll win because he's pretty cool. Let's see. How much better off we'd be if like a regular Republican was in charge the last 4 years? I feel like a lot of really awful stuff would have happened anyway. There would have been less like, Charlottesville rallies and like Proud Boys and like far-right racist violence threatening to tear the country apart. Like, it would have been a lot of the same stuff, but but America would be a lot less close to civil war, I think. Are there Americans who don't get the working class message that is oozing from Geddy Lee's lips? Like there are conservative Americans who don't understand Bruce Springsteen? Oh, probably. Have you ever investigated Steven Pinker and his transition from an anarchist to whatever he is now after the police strike in Montreal back in, I think, the 60s or 70s? No, I haven't investigated that. Steven Pinker, noted friend of pedophiles, Steven Pinker. You and non-compete turned me from a centrist into an anarcho-communist. Sweet. Did you miss the Rage Against Machine debacle? Probably. I haven't followed anything that's going on with that. Have you been to Vancouver? If so, thoughts on the city? I have been to Vancouver, but I haven't been to Vancouver in like 20 years. Like I was like literally 10 years old the last time I went to Vancouver. So I can't really say much about it. I don't have really that many memories. I do remember the Pacific Ocean and digging for clams. That was fun. But I can't really tell you anything else that happened in Vancouver when I was there. What's the next Tristan Won't Shut Up video? That is, I'm calling it the Posting Wars, which is sort of the beginning of a series of videos I'm going to do on the sort of industry, like the way that like social media is changing politics and like how like bots and trolling online has become basically a pretty official wing of electoral politics, or just like politics in general, and who's playing and how it's played and that kind of stuff. Just gotta talk about like what's motivating people, what it's doing, what its impact is, who's doing it, like what are the Russians doing, what did 8chan do to the internet and all that kind of stuff. So my next video is going to be sort of an introduction to that series. Let's see. Brian called me yesterday. Aw. He was a nice guy. What do you mean by secular history of Mormonism? There's a podcast I follow that focuses on that, but he delves into like what he thought inspired Joseph Smith or his revelations. Would you avoid that stuff? Yeah, mostly my interest is that is like the Mormons as a religious movement, and like because like when they settled in Utah, they spent like multiple decades building like their own sort of mini society in the United States or in like Utah. And then as like kind of the borders or centralization of America started to come closer to hitting the borders of like the Mormons, they were becoming more and more like openly demonized in the press and stuff. And there was like some like, U.S. troops were sent to try and like arrest them and try to impose law, and like the Mormons sort of resisted that for a long time, and like yeah, like the Mormons, like there's like this whole period where like the Mormons were like trying to like cling on to existence with their like lifestyle, and the United States was just so like was just fighting them really hard. And I want to talk a little bit about that story. And eventually kind of came to a peaceful standstill when the Mormon Church decided to ban polygamy, and that let them make Utah into a state. And then the federal government decided to stop openly trying to destroy the Mormon religion. But I think it's interesting that was like a thing for a while. Do you know any good books on the Vietnam War? My favorite Vietnam War book is The Sorrow of War, which is a memoir by a Viet Cong soldier. It's pretty good. A shit poster connected to the NDP. Now I will say I don't know if Jeff's actually like a shit poster, but he definitely from his likes appreciates a good shit post. That's what I will say. It's like, I mean, he's a politician's partner, so he can't really say a whole lot, but or a potential politician's partner. And he was like totally like standing for Bernie Sanders during the primaries, so that's good. What can Canadian... But also, that's not Brian. Brian, I think, is just a bit of he's his own little, like, sweetheart kind of guy. He's a very nice person. Very kind, from my experience. What can Canadians do to push the NDP to be more vocal about ranked choice voting? I think it's a healthy first step in improving democracy. Right now, the official position of the NDP is that they want to push for popular proportional representation, and I think that they should focus on that. I feel like that is ranked choice voting was a compromise that the Liberals tried to push, and then as soon as they got elected, they dropped and forgot about it. And so my take is that the NDP should be laser focused on getting to proportional representation, because we're basically not going to have a democratic election until it's proportional representation. What can Canadians do to put... Oh, I already answered that one. How fucked up do you have to be to want to stab a simulation of your mother in the face? I imagine that's a pretty bad place. That's true. Tristan Ollie basically turned me from a liberal to a dem sock. That's fun. I'll take it. Just winged you and made you a Unitarian. That's what I'll say to that. Since I know you'd appreciate that joke. Okay. Have you ever heard Robbie Williams talk? That's the real life accent sounds like. I don't know if I've heard Robbie Williams talk. Let's see if we could get a nice little YouTube video. Sorry. Oi, have you ever seen Robbie Williams talk? That's how I talk. A real life accent sounds like, real king. Okay. See, the thing is, if I learn your real accent, now I can't just make up like the most ridiculous British accents I can think of to be a goofball.
Yeah, do you like? Oh, lovely.
When's the last time you sang a bit of
About 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
Not. Oh boy, let's hear this.
I don't know if I performed that song like I've just been given a parking ticket.
Okay, well that's not like a like polish your shoes governor type accent at all. Okay. Have you considered, instead of the posting wars, the social wars? But posting wars is so much more of like a shit posting. What's it called? It's so much more of like a shit posting thing to do. So I gotta call it the posting wars, because it's about posting. People are there's an internet. It's an internet thing. one of the reasons I want to visit Vancouver is to see orcas, which are my favorite animals. That's pretty cool. Oh my. It says here that I'm not getting enough. I need to redirect all power to the impulse manifolds so that we could more power to the streaming tubes. Apparently, YouTube's not getting my frames. Didn't the Mormons kind of have their own nation for a bit? Like, effectively, they had their own political party. They had more or less their own laws. The reason they were able to do that is because they were so far away from... Like, they were, like, in the middle of the fucking desert in Utah. So it's not like they had a whole lot of, like... You know... or options, I should say. And so, oh, there's lag. I don't know what to say about the lag. Sorry. I'm not getting any drop frames here. I don't know, like, if somebody's downloading something on my internet, but I don't think so. My name is LeBron James. I like to throw the basketball. Sorry. I'm trying to figure out what's going on with my bitrate. Because it's gone down on Twitch, too. So I'm like, I don't know. Let me see if there's something hogging on my internet. Doesn't seem like it. I don't know. There's not much I can do about it, sadly. Hopefully it'll get better. That's the hope. But yeah, the Mormons sort of basically ran their own country for a while. That was more or less its own thing, and it was just far enough away from America that it didn't really have to deal with the rules all that much. I have you on my lowest settings. You're still buffering and freezing. Yeah, I don't know what it is. It might be server issues or something. I don't know. I don't have control. I'm sorry. We're just going to have to tough this out together. Hopefully it'll work its way out. The bitrate already looks like it's getting a little bit better on Twitch, so maybe it's even out already. In your opinion, who's the worst serial killer in Canadian history? I think it's Clifford Olson. I don't actually know that many Canadian serial killers. I only know the one. There's only one like Canadian serial killer that I really know all that well. And it's Paul Bernardo, because I'm from Burlington, where Paul Bernardo killed one of our teenager from our town. So, and what's it called? I went to the same high school that one of Paul Bernardo's victims went to, and so there's a swimming pool in my high school that was named after her, and so that's like the only one that comes to mind, really. Plus, also because my mom grew up in. Or because of my mom was like around when Paul Bernardo was active, she was like kind of obsessed with him because of like, you know, how people get obsessed with serial killers, seeing them in the news and shit. Let's see. This book. The Sword of War by Bao Nin. Yeah, that's it. That's the book. Do you think the U.S. Episcopal Church and a branch of the Church of England is highly underrated? It's very underrated. It's the first big church to allow same-sex marriage, female bishops, priest marriage, and democracy in the hierarchy. They allowed me refuge when I was homeless. That sounds pretty legit. I'm down. Have you ever heard Patrick Stewart's real accent? No. Are you saying he's not really French? Thoughts on Facebook claiming to ban QAnon pages and groups? Sounds like a decent thing. So unsure that Facebook will actually go through with it. Yeah, in like that situation, it really depends upon how much effort they really put into banning QAnon pages and as they pop up, and like how much effort they put into managing it as they keep popping up. We'll see. We'll see. Can you explain how proportional representation works? Like, how would that change MP districts, and how would regular citizens be able to put their names on the ballot to run for an MP position? So, proportional representation basically works where every political party has a list, sort of like a list from 1 to whatever, of how many MPs they're going to be able to put in Parliament. And as the election happens, they get a higher percentage of the popular vote. They get to do they get to send that many people into Parliament to represent the interests of the country. And so when it comes to like the federal level, if we had proportional representation, for example, we'd have like one Marxist-Leninist Party of Canada or Communist Party of Canada seat. We'd have like the Green Party would have about 10% of seats and all that kind of stuff. And honestly, I think that there would not be electoral districts then per se, which would result in no more like weird things like what happened in 2019, where the Liberal Party has fewer votes than the Conservatives, but formed government. So we wouldn't have that anymore. That'd be nice. So I would say that's like a thing we should do, because I don't really think that you need a local MP that you can go yell at, and like this is the way that a lot of European countries run their federal government. And if you have local provincial governments that run differently, that's fine. Since the stream is so calm, could you please consider doing a quiplash? I said we're done. We can't do it anymore. I'm sorry, it's done. It has been ruined. Can you please do a video on Mfecane? I remember that name. It's Swahili, but I can't remember the details. I just remember I had to remember it for a test when I was in Indigenous Studies in undergrad. How would MPs be held responsible if a Green MP from BS tries to sell out to the pipeline gods? From BS? Do you mean BC? The way that it's supposed to work anyway, what would happen, most likely, is what happens in other countries, which is that instead of like having electoral districts the way that you think, what would happen is that, because in a lot of proportional representation countries, it drifts away from having like 1 or 2 or 3 major political parties and moves towards having lots of little parties. And sometimes they're single issue parties, or sometimes they're very regional parties. And so if you wanted to quote unquote hold somebody responsible, you could just run and take away some of their vote. Because like all you would need is like something like, I think like 3% of the vote in order to get at least 1 seat in Parliament. And like all governments are coalition governments. I don't know. I feel like local MPs are typically just organs of the political party at this point anyways. Like why pretend that you can like still go to like the local MP like it's like the Australia episode of The Simpsons where you go and yell at the Prime Minister to see how angry you are about it's a damn outrage it is. And like, you know, you wouldn't end up in that situation. See, I am a millennial, and so my brain is incapable of expressing things through anything but references to The Simpsons. Hence why I made that joke about winging Matt Lipton and turning him into a Unitarian. Mfecane is known as a Sesotho word, meaning crushing, scattering, forced dispersal. Period of widespread chaos and warfare amongst indigenous ethnic communities in southern Africa during the period between 1815 and about 1840. Interesting. Right now, things are weird in my stream, so like there's a huge delay, so we wouldn't even be able to play Quiplash anyway. Did Native Americans fight in the Civil War? Oh, most definitely they did. Especially in the West, because like the Civil War happened all over the country, so there was like fighting in the West too. Native Americans in the Civil War. Native Americans in the American Civil War participated as individuals, bands, tribes, and nations in numerous skirmishes and battles. 28,693 Native Americans served during the war, mostly in the Confederate military and a minority in the Union. They participated in battles such as Pea Ridge, Second Manassas, Antietam, Spotsylvania, Cold Harbor, and federal assaults on Petersburg. They were found in the Eastern, Western, and Trans-Mississippi theaters. At the outbreak of the war, for example, most Cherokees sided with the Union, but then they soon allied with the Confederacy. That's because the Cherokees practiced slavery back then. Native Americans fought knowing they would jeopardize their sovereignty, unique cultures, and ancestral lands. They ended up being on the losing side of the Civil War. Yeah, so it sounds like they fought to try and join the Confederacy in fighting back the American government, which like makes a little bit of sense. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no? I'm a fan of pepperoni or pineapple on pizza. I am a Hawaiian pizza enjoyer. Should the Mormons have allowed to run a theocracy in the middle of nowhere? What would stop them being imperialisms? I don't know. They didn't seem too interested in it for the most part. They just kind of did their thing in like Salt Lake City. I guess they work sort of like, what's it called? They did sort of go out and about, out in the thing. Why didn't Chong Ha have the balls to go out east and discover America? I mean, obviously the joke is he didn't have any balls, but also, I don't know, they didn't really think that there was anything on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. And they knew that there was stuff in the Indian Ocean trade, and that was what they were interested in. So he went on his treasure fleet and took it to the Indian Ocean. Because, like, the Indian Ocean was like this like hotbed of trade and stuff like that, and that's where they were trying to go and show how fucking awesome China is, to try and build trade relations with the Indian Ocean trade zones. Why didn't I don't think Luca Magnotta was a serial killer. I think Luca Magnotta is just like, he just killed one person and then filmed it and sent it to the news. So he was just very flashy about it. Patrick Stewart's from Yorkshire. It sounds nothing like his Shakespearean stage voice, which he uses almost everywhere. Oh my, cool. The Vancouver PD aggressively ignored reports from sex workers for years. With serial killer praying one of them, we never apologized because, ACAB. Yeah. When I moved to Toronto, there was a serial killer that was targeting and trying to kill gay people. That because they were gay, the police didn't listen to them until he was discovered about a year after I moved there, because they found that he was burying body parts in like people's gardens and stuff. Dumbest conspiracy theory of all time that had the most profound impact on humanity. Best answer to that would be probably the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, where a fiction novel that made this implication that the Jews were secretly plotting against the world turned into people believing it genuinely, even after it became publicly exposed to be a work of fiction. And it eventually created like the anti-Semitic hysteria that eventually led to the Nazis and stuff. So I'd probably say that would be the big one. Do you think we put too much emphasis on serial killers and how evil they supposedly are? At the end of the day, they are really just mentally ill people who like kill a handful of people. It's true. They're very heavily sensationalized in a way that's not great because it kind of romanticizes them. And on top of that, typically serial killers being allowed to function are more of a sign of holes in the justice system than it is like actual, like them being like particularly evil. They're compulsive killers who you know, typically prey on groups of people that the police don't give a shit about helping out, like indigenous people, women, LGBTQ plus people. And that's why they're usually able to function for so long, because nobody gives a shit if, like, sex workers start disappearing. The police won't do anything about that. Because they're the police. The police don't really do anything for anybody except rich people. I hate Trump because the late night talk show host told me to. Ooh. The politics understander has logged on. Did you just skip my explanation of Patrick Stewart's accent? I didn't skip it. I read the thing. I'm not going to go, like, look for a YouTube video of Patrick Stewart speaking right now. I'm in the middle of a stream. Oh, man. Military expansion of the Zulus under King Shaka and the chaos they wrought. I have been interested in making a Shaka Zulu video in the past. Shaka Zulu has been on my list, although I have a feeling like there's like... I've already done 2 videos about like Southern Africa. I feel like I should do some other topics before I go into that one. Have you read Charles C. Mann's 1491? What did you think, and what do you think of Afrocentrists trying to appropriate Native American culture, such as the Olmecs? I mean, I have read 1491. It's actually the most popular Step Back video is based on 1491. I think it's really good. It's basically, anytime somebody tells me they like Guns, Germs, and Steel, I say, Guns, Germs, and Steel is bad, read this instead. Because 1491 is like the response to Guns, Germs, and Steel. Because, like, it's like, why? Because, like, Guns, Germs, and Steel is like, why were indigenous people so unadvanced compared to the obviously superior Europeans? Must have been geography. And Charles Mann's like, the answer to your question is that they weren't less advanced. You're just being a racist git. And that is the correct answer. And it's a really fucking good book. Probably like the best read I've had on pre-Columbian Native American culture. And Afrocentrists who try to say that like black explorers to Mexico are the reason why like the Olmecs made the heads the way they look. And what I would say is citation needed. But besides citation needed, I would also say that it's, you know, there's not a ton of these people who are trying to say that kind of stuff. It's sort of very fringe, so it's not really that consequential, to be honest. So I don't really think about it all that much. But I would say to that person, you're wrong, and you're sort of trying to diminish the ingenuity of indigenous people in the Americas. But honestly, they're so like, there's not that many Afrocentrists who would make a claim like that. But I did a whole series on, what's it called? I did a whole series on different people who think that they beat Columbus to the Americas, and I talked about that in that series. It used to be a very popular series for me. I get why they did that, but let's face it, the Confederacy would have stolen their land too. Oh yeah, definitely. Hawaiian pizza is great when prepared properly. Yeah. Apparently the inventor of Hawaiian pizza used to live in London, so that's kind of cool. Should we be mad at the natives for fighting for slavery? I mean, no, because blaming an entire, like, native is not really like a, like, it was specifically the people who fought, I looked it up right now. The people who fought for the Confederacy were, like, primarily the Cherokee and the Choctaw. Do you want to be pissed off at the Cherokee and the Choctaw? Maybe. But like, I imagine the vast majority of I imagine that that is not like a thing that they take pride in today. Only Polynesians explore the Pacific. There is some evidence they reach the Americas. Yes, I mentioned that in the video series I did. God damn, I'm only 2 hours in. I'm burning that. What's it called? The train is not going very fast. Okay. Do we know who really wrote the Protocols of the Elders of Zion? Today, do we really know who wrote the Protocols of the Elders of Zion? I think we do. I don't exactly remember, but I think that it has origins. I was reading a book on this. I think its origins come from I think it's a Russian novel or something. Let me see if I can find out. Yeah, it was Russian. It's a fabricated anti-Semitic text. Yeah, the Protocols, it was a fabricated document purporting to be factual textual evidence that shows that could not been textual evidence shows that it could not have been produced prior to 1901. It is little known that the title of Sergei Nilis' widely distributed edition contains the dates 1902-1903. And it's likely a document that was actually written at this time in Russia, despite Nilis' attempt to cover this up by inserting French-sounding words into his edition. Cesar G. Demicheli argues that it was manufactured in the months after a Russian Zionist Congress in September of 1902, and that it was originally a parody of Jewish idealism meant for internal circulation amongst anti-Semites until it was decided to clean it up and publish it as if it were real. Self-congratulations in various testimonies show that the individuals involved, including the text's initial publisher, Pavel Khrushchevin, deliberately obscured the origins of the text and lied about it in the decades afterwards. So there you go. So yeah, people have done research on this. Do you think sometime in the future people will write books or think pieces about LeftTube as a movement in future decades? Maybe. I wouldn't be surprised. 1 out of 5 victims of serial killers in Canada are Indigenous women. There's an interesting article in 2015 about it. Many were murdered throughout Manitoba to British Columbia. Yeah, it's called the Highway of Tears, and there's a major, like, what's it called? The murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls thing is a very big part, or was a major election issue in 2015, where Justin Trudeau said he was going to take care of it, and now 5 years later, that has not happened. And Justin Trudeau is like, he did a post, like, I think it was like yesterday, the day before, that was like, I stand with these missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Like, it is like a known quantity in Canada to people, and the fact that the government's doing nothing to stop it. A lot of Indigenous women, or a lot of women in the Inuit women in the Arctic also get kidnapped and sold into human trafficking, which also doesn't get dealt with that much. Is Last Week Tonight overrated? It's very informative, but I think its viewers care more about feeling self-righteous than they know about systemic problems while not doing anything to help. I don't think it's overrated. We talked about this yesterday. I'm kind of under the impression that it is a gateway drug for libs, because it's like a show that libs watch, but it actually very occasionally talks about class, and no other like show that libs respect talks that much about like exploiting the poor and things like that. And so like when he did a story on payday loans and a story on multi-level marketing and stuff like that shit was really good, and he was talking about basically the exploitation of poor people in a way that libs could get on board with, and so I think it's fine. You want good books on pre-colonial agriculture and engineering. The biggest estate on Earth, how Aborigines made Australia, and Dark Emu. Oh yeah, I don't know anything about pre-contact Australia, I'll be honest. So that'd be a good way to start. Thoughts on the phantom time hypothesis? I think it's funny because the phantom time hypothesis can be is like, so like what it is it's this conspiracy theory that that like the Dark Ages, this period of European history where there's not a whole lot of writing, didn't actually happen because like it's a conspiracy theory. It's all a trick, and that Charlemagne, the crowning of Charlemagne and the end of the Roman Empire are actually like a lot closer than you'd think, and that it's actually like 1400 and something and not 2020. And what's funny about that is it's a conspiracy theory that makes sense if you, or that only tries to make sense if you only read European history. The problem is that it doesn't corroborate with, like, you know, the rest of the world at the time that was also doing history. Like, you just have to look to, like, the Middle East and stuff like that. Like, one good example that that is, like, a thing that, like, kind of gives us, like, an idea of, like, where everything was in history is something called SN 1077, I think it was called. Or SN 1066. Let me just check real quick. SN 1054, which was a supernova that happened in the year 1054, which multiple sources around the world wrote about contemporaneously because it basically like made like a huge light in the sky for like several days. And things like that show that like the phantom time hypothesis is completely full of shit, because there's parts of the world that are not Europe that also had history that sort of shows that it's wrong. So it's like what Robert Evans talked about, where fascists are radicalized through humor, in a sense. I would say, I mean, it's different. The fascists that were radicalized, like in today's day and age, is different than what we have now. Like, you'll see. I'm gonna make a Tristan Won't Shut Up video about it at some point because it has a lot to do with what's it called? Has a lot to do with my my Posting Wars series. Is your Conservative Party to the right of ours? Maybe not. I don't really know what the line of the British Conservative Party is like, but our Conservative Party still is less and less every election. Still thinks of being socially conservative as sort of a third rail of politics. So, like, you know, our conservatives tend not to be public if they're like anti-abortion or anti-women's rights or something or other. I don't know what that's like in the UK, but that's why, like, for a long time the conservatives were called the progressive conservatives, because they're like, we're for all of the social equality, we just hate poor people. And very often our conservative parties, like, you know, our conservative party's initiatives and its election lines are usually something around the line of, like, what about the debt? What about the deficit? We need to cut spending. We need to find efficiencies so that we can balance the budget. And that's, like, basically, like, their only thing that they talk about. Except in, like, Alberta, because Alberta just goes full blood and soil every single time, because fucking scary-ass province. Many former slaves of the Confederate and Native American tribes were entitled to the same assistance and privileges on reservations post-Civil War. One reason the blood quotas were put in place were to weed them out. Okay. Why hasn't Sean Hannity gotten COVID yet? Well, they're saving that one for Christmas. Love your show, man. Got introduced to it 6 months ago. Would love to support you further, but I lost my job, and I don't start another until the end of the month. Don't worry, Chris. What's it called? If you like my stuff, that's all that matters. And if you can't contribute financially, I don't want anybody to. I don't want anybody to contribute financially if it is even like in any way inconvenient for you. I want you to feel perfectly comfortable if you want to support Step Back financially. If you don't want to spend money, and even if you don't want to spend money, in that case, it's fine. It's fine. It's all right. I'm perfectly happy to have people watch my content for free. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this job, obviously. If you do want to help out, though, and money is not a way that you can do so, might I recommend sharing? Like putting my videos on Reddit, showing if I have videos to like friends on Facebook and like Twitter and stuff like that, and word of mouth, like that's really that helps a lot. In many ways, it helps more even than Patreon. So, yeah. What exactly does it mean to be liberal? I'm confused between them being socially progressive while fiscally conservative. But then would that mean that they are libertarians? Would you call them, or would you call Warren or Harris libertarians? What I would say is that like a liberal is like an idea is a lot of times, like in American context specifically, a liberal is somebody who holds generally socially progressive beliefs, but also generally believes that capitalism is good. Like that's like the main thing. And very often it means that they like, you know, that would mean that that they see the problems of the world, but like they don't see the systemic issues that cause them. Or if they do, they tend to go for answers that sidestep discussion of capitalism. Like they tend to be like, oh, like it's all these interconnected bigotries, like racism and sexism and homophobia. That is the cause of all of the problems of the world. Not realizing that those are exacerbated and made worse because of class and historical materialism and stuff. But they can't really see the trees for the forest, I guess, or the forest for the trees. Which country do you think is in the best position to launch a revolution? Geez. I would think like a country that has a relatively weak government and like kind of like shallow institutions. So like a pretty young country. A lot of instability. And like, yeah, like a government that doesn't have a whole lot of things. Brazil might be high on that list, weirdly enough. Because Brazil in its current incarnation has only been around since like the 80s, I want to say. And like, yeah, like, there's some pretty young countries like South Sudan, probably. Kosovo. I feel like those sort of have the sort of factors that lead to revolutions. When did the ancestors of native peoples go from killing off the wild horses and sloths to living in balance to creatures like the bison? Or is it more complicated than that? Like the thing is, like a lot of the times, like it wasn't like the whole like living in balance thing is a little not like the thing that they do, but like the like megafauna of North America went extinct because of a combination of hunting from humans and sort of climate change as the world was getting hotter. And over time, like over a period of like thousands of years, the people, as those megafauna started to die out, the people who lived in the regions who used to like rely on hunting big, slow, dumb animals had to figure out other ways to scratch a living from the earth, and so they ended up getting more into like other forms of things and agriculture. And like the agricultural revolution in the Americas happened around the same time as the agricultural revolution in the old world. And a lot of like the sort of like burning rotation version of agriculture that happened in the America, like in North America. I don't know how old that is, to be honest. But the sort of like geoengineering of the continent that the indigenous people did was like a project that took thousands of years. Like the taming and mastering of corn, as an example. Why is it racist to say where your society developed determines how advanced you can become? Because it's ahistorical. It's it's like a teleology. Because like he's like working back from a conclusion that like Europeans were superior in development in all these ways, when that has like that betrays like a very Eurocentric white view of like what progress is, what development is, and sort of doesn't take out all the edge cases and doesn't factor in for culture and like all those things. It's like, okay. Like despite all these advantages Europe had, the reason why it quote unquote won is because of colonization and violence and conquest. Not because they just had so many geological advantages. Still looking forward to a Tristan Won't Shut Up about Trank Uger. Yeah. I said I was going to do that. I got to do that at some point. Heard the UK are building offshore detention centers like Australia did in Nauru and Papua New Guinea. Jesus Christ, that's terrifying. Our conservatives usually know when to say the quiet part loud. Jason Kenney would slot in perfectly with Johnson's government, though. Yeah, the thing is, like, they used to be... They used to like, yeah, like I think you said the part, I think you said you said the other way around, because like it's been so common these days. But our conservatives tend to know how to say the loud part quiet, but they are sort of losing that, and the encroachment of like blood and soil like fascist shit into the Conservative Party is happening. Like last election, the fascist who ran for leadership of the Conservative Party lost, and he tried to start his own party and failed miserably. So we'll see where that all goes. Whew. QAnon is definitely a psyop to draw up support for Trump, but it's disheartening to see people on the left not even considering the people at the top of the economic exploitation ladder are also. I'm going to make a video about QAnon at some point. I have things to say about QAnon. And it has a lot to do with the protocols of the elders in Zion. I think that the QAnon, like, I've said this in streams in the past, so it's not going to surprise many of you. But, like, I think that QAnon is the, like, American fascism that the alt-right would never have been, because the alt-right was too closely associated explicitly with Nazis and hate groups. And it was very much like German 1930s-style fascism. While, like, QAnon is exactly the kind of fascism that will grow in America, and that will take heed, that will take over. What if every freed slave had really gotten 40 acres and a mule? I mean, I don't know what would happen, but shit, that would be pretty sweet. I wish that, I wish people wrote that alternate history instead of, like, what if the Confederacy won the war for, like, the 20th time? If you would like to simp for Tristan but can't afford to do so, try joining fan art of him. Ha! Hey, Carrie, thank you for the $5 super chat. Much appreciated. You're really helping this thing go. Hey, so I'm so happy that Showtime is making a show about John Brown. Have you seen The Good Lord Bird? No, I haven't. There's a John Brown show? Shit, I gotta see this. That makes me happy. Thank you for telling me, and thank you for the super chat. I loved your Emma Goldman video. She's my fave too. I read her quote about marriage being a vile church and state begotten weed as part of my wedding vows. That's awesome. I'm not brave enough to have done that. Was her ice cream store actually helping fund assassinations per the song I Think I'm Emma Goldman by Soul? I don't know. I think they just, I mean, in a way, because they were raising money based, I think they were just, the ice cream shop was so that they could, you know, make ends meet. They could pay their rent and they could eat food. So, like, in a way, it funded their activism. If you could go back in time and verify one specific event in history, what would it be? God damn, that's a tough one. I think I have to chew on that one for a bit. That's a tough one. A very specific event. I mean, like, what's it called? Very specific to the time we're in now. I would love to be a fly on a wall when Obama was making all of those phone calls earlier this year to Joe Biden, or to make everybody drop out to support Joe Biden. I think there's some pretty fucked up stuff that would have happened in there. But that's kind of a weird, lame answer. Yeah, I should have a ready-made answer ready to go, but I don't, sadly. Sorry. If they made a People's History of Canada, where would be the starting point? Like Cartier? I mean, I would start with the Bering Land Bridge, but that's just me. But I guess Jacques Cartier is as good a wet person as any to start with. Fucking monsters. Have you seen any details on the Kentucky election between Mitch McConnell and Amy McGrath? No, I haven't. My guess is that Mitch McConnell looks pretty comfortable. All I know is that Amy McGrath has apparently been, like, has said that she's going to vote for Trump and, like, has been running pro-Trump ads with, like, resistance money, which is kind of her whole, like, her campaign strategy is, like, I'm a conservative Democrat. Don't, like, what's it called? Vote for Trump, but then also vote for me. And it's like, fucking what? What'd you say? Hey, thank you, Evangeline MK. Thank you for following. Welcome to the Orc Gang. Welcome. The reason why Europe won is because the Mongols wiped out Chinese and Middle Eastern civilization. In fact, the Middle East never really recovered to the Mongols to this day. To an extent, yeah, that's true. I also think that there's cultural reasons. Like, the fact that Guns, Germs, and Steel doesn't factor in that, like, Europe was uniquely belonging to a religion that is, like, the only truly, like, expansionistic religion to exist in, like, to exist on a big scale like that. Like, it's a religion that believes that it has to literally dominate the world in order to function, which, like, no other religion on earth really follows. And I feel like that plays a role. If you look at, like, early colonization, that played a role in, like, why they did some of the things they did, and then economic drivers from then on out. Most modern hunter-gatherers get the majority of their calories from plants. Humans are anatomically herbivorous, facultative omnivores. Yeah, more or less. You are correct. That's why there's some people who believe that hunter-gatherer should be renamed to foraging. So that's like a pretty, that's something that has been floated. How would you convince somebody who insists on worldviews that center around individualism that their life is mostly determined by factors they do not control? Again, I just like ask questions. Ask them about how much control they actually do have over their lives. And think that, like, you know, if everyone looked out for each other, do you think if we lived in, you know, sort of like an anarchisty such situation, do you think you'd have more freedom or less? Even if you did have to do sometimes some collective work. Like, in general, you'd have to work a lot less, and you'd have a lot more freedom to just do whatever the fuck you want with your time. How do you best explain to people that getting rid of the popular vote is good, and that if Republicans care so much about losing elections, I think you meant the Electoral College, they could try to be less bigoted and elitist party? If the Republicans became like Ontario's PCs, they would have greater chances of winning seats and maybe even the presidency. I mean, I don't know if there's a way to win with them, because the thing is, they're both like such Big Ten parties, and they're so ideologically driven that, like, my guess is that my only thing I can think of is basically the golden rule, which is like, hey, how would you like it if a Democrat got fewer votes but won the Electoral College? Would you like that? What would you think about the laws they pass? How legitimate do you think they would be? And hopefully, like, seeing the shoe on the other foot would make them a little bit more open to it. But since only Republicans have benefited from Electoral College victories, I don't think that that's gonna happen anytime soon. Amy McGrath's campaign is the height of stupid bullshit. Oh boy. Which historical figure do you think you could convince of the error of their ways if you could travel back in time and speak with them? TLDR, who was the most reasonable but misguided historical figure? Yeesh. Lyndon B. Johnson? Maybe? I don't know. Can you please explain the drawing of yourself with a lightsaber in the background? Oh, yeah. Kelly painted that. I think it's supposed to be... it's like fire. It's supposed to be like the flames of knowledge and inquiry. She made it for me to be part of my set, and I'm sure she'll be really happy that I'm talking about it. But it's me holding a book, looking off into the horizon with like a kind of green torch, because green is like my favorite color. So, but it's not a lightsaber. Suppose you dumped a shitload of human children on Earth. Suppose you dumped a load of human children on Earth. Like, if they survived, do you think their descendants would recreate something like capitalism? Possibly, yeah. If the same material conditions popped up and they developed industrialization, then sure. I also believe that a lot of animal-based calories is from scavenged meat, as is the reason why our savory taste buds, according to a video by PBS Eons. Yeah, that whole thing about what's it called? Our taste for fermented meat and stuff like that is actually pretty was pretty interesting. That was a pretty good fight, or a pretty good video. Which historical figure would you want to get into a tickle fight with? Emma Goldman, so that the conversation would at least be fun. Enhance? Oh yeah, I guess I can go get it. Oh. right? This, let me just get the thingy. Here it is. Up close. With all the people. Isn't that fun? It's like purple, like the step back. And then it's gray, sky, and green, because I like green. Like this kind of like dark green here. That's my favorite shade of green. And then this me with the step back it, which was my baby that is deceased, and a book because history is book. As I'm learning, as everything that has been drawn to associate with history has shown. Hitler in his early days could have been dissuaded from the Nazi ideology potentially if I was to go to a different organization when he was working for military intelligence. Oh yeah, that is definitely a thing you could have done. Alright. So later this month I'm going to be a part of a Zoom meeting for the NDP's policy stuff. Tired, forgetting the exact words. I'm going to be the full disability rep for my writing. Oh boy. Do you think China would have created something like capitalism if they industrialized first? Maybe. Probably. What big societal and I don't actually like capitalism. Like, there's two ways you can see capitalism: as sort of the social structure that builds up around industrialization, and the social structure that builds up around colonization and slavery. And so, if the former is the case, then yeah, probably. If the latter is the case, then probably not, because China wasn't like into the big colony game like the Europeans were. See you later, Dale. Have a good night. What big social and global changes do you hope to see in your lifetime? I believe the combined grief and despair of forthcoming climate catastrophe will unify the world. Yeah. I hope... The number one thing I hope to see in my lifetime that I think I probably could see is the development of sort of cultured animal protein, and the ending of the large-scale farming of animals for their meat. I honestly think that once we've cracked that nut and we're able to stop farming or stop raising animals for meat, that in the far future, or in the not too distant future actually, like the generation later, they're going to see what we did to animals as one of the most fucked up things that we did in this period of history. And that people are going to think that we were like absolute barbarians. And so I think that I might be able to see that technology mature in my lifetime, and maybe that actually happen. It looks like a Harry Potter cover. If you had to pick a single person who's had the most influence on history, who would it be, for better or worse? I would say Christopher Columbus. The Columbian Exchange, like starting a new era for humanity, but at the same time also like it like caused like not only huge changes on like the human level of society, and kickstarted possibly one of the biggest transference of people and species that the world had seen, and like forever changed the Earth's like makeup and biosphere and things like that. Like the fact that like North America's ecology is still changing because of the Columbian Exchange to this day. Like still like is a thing. Like there wasn't earthworms in the Americas before Europeans came. Like the massive amounts of changes that have happened to the world because of Christopher Columbus. I think is like the big thing. That's my answer. Do you think World War I was inevitable? If it wasn't Franz Ferdinand, wouldn't have something else war have been avoided entirely? I do think it would have been. I think that World War I was inevitable, and a lot of people at that time were thinking that as well, because they had the way that like military technology was developing, and the really unstable way that the world peace was being balanced was sort of falling apart because of nationalism, and the way that military mobilization worked with like railroad timetables and stuff like that meant that the sort of strategy for war was that if you wanted to get a decisive early victory or something like that, you had to mobilize your troops and get them onto those like rail cars and get those trains moving so that you can set up a front line faster than the other side could, which meant that starting the war first and being the aggressor and getting into the fight earliest was like the optimal strategy, which meant that people were always trying to be were trying to be the first person to strike if things went south. And so yeah, the world was on a hair trigger at that point. Guess who's catching their first stream in weeks due to a fucked up sleep schedule tonight? Well, hello, Brad Pitt. Welcome back. When will Canadians demand the crown and its tyranny over Canada? Oh man, I don't know. It would be really if when Queen Elizabeth dies, I'll be very curious to see what happens in Canada. 'Cause like, I don't know. When we end up with King Charles, or if we end up with King William, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. Be interesting. Also, do you buy the years of rice and salt having the Industrial Revolution coming out of India, of all places? I mean, maybe. Like, the thing you need to have an Industrial Revolution is, like, coal deposits and steel. And if India has enough of that, I guess they could do it. But honestly, like, the idea that that industrialization sort of needs a colonial empire to do properly, I think is quite compelling. And so, if India didn't have colonies, then I don't think it would. The drawing makes you think about how if you stare long enough into the abyss stares back. But you just don't give a fuck and try to teach the abyss with your book. That sounds like something I'd do. I like that interpretation. I appreciate you reading my super chat, but how do you plan to balance your need for cash with the need to be purely educational? Well, my Patreon is working out pretty well. AdSense works out decently. And those two things, and I also do freelance work on the side. And Tristan Won't Shut Up exists, and sponsorships exist, and and between all those things, I make enough now that that I can somehow survive without having to, spend my creative energy focused entirely on some sort of job somewhere. So at the moment, it's working. In the future, I hope that as Step Back grows in size, that more patrons. Like, the thing is, I think I'm tracing a lot of my Patreon growth in the last couple months to Tristan Won't Shut Up, And so if Tristan Won't Shut Up funds Step Back, that doesn't, I don't mind that at all. What 5 thinkers would you name to sum up your worldviews? I mean, there's some simple ones. There's Emma Goldman and Peter Kropotkin. Those are 2 people I have a lot of respect for their take on their analysis of the world. I mean, Karl Marx probably going to be in there. Let's try to think of someone who's not like... I am definitely influenced by, like, for some reason I put, Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky is probably, like, the most directly responsible for how my politics went the way they did. Sitting Bull, you know, like, indigenous resistance, anti-colonialism, that's 4. I need a 5th one. Gosh. Yeah, maybe something like Edward Said or something like that. All right. Oscar Romero, maybe? That'd be a good one. Man, I'm being like... Because sometimes I'm like... Because I'm getting like pretty burnt out, and so I'm like... Sometimes I just like stop and I'm like vibing to the music, and then I'm like, oh shit, I'm doing a show. Would there be celebrities in an anarchist society? Or is celebrity an unjust hierarchy? It's not really a hierarchy. Hierarchy implies that like celebrities can command people to do things. I think that if you're going to live in a society that has popular culture, you're going to end up with celebrities, yes. What do you think about Cans UK? Will it happen? Will it be more positive or negative? I'm not a big fan of Cans UK. I had somebody reach out to me years ago to get me to talk about it, and my take was, it's a weird conservative fantasy to have all of the white countries from the old British Empire have sort of a collective like group, kind of like the European Union, like free movement and stuff like that. That is a way for, and at the time, because it's a long time ago, it was a way for the Brits to have an excuse to do Brexit and have something to fall back on. But instead they did Brexit with nothing to fall back on. So there's that. But I don't, I'm not really super jazzed about Canada, New Zealand, and Australia and the UK's shared history of genocide and domination, and so maybe we shouldn't have that set up. I'm much more into the idea that somebody floated of Canada joining the European Union. Let's fucking do that. If the Young Turks never existed, do you think the internet and YouTube wouldn't have been so many reactionary political commentators and toxic debate bro culture? Ooh. I don't know. I'm not sure what role the Young Turks would have played in, like, the rise of internet political commentators, and because like a lot of people who were on the Young Turks started entire journalism careers based on their time there, and it did seem to have done some work to legitimize political discourse online. So it was definitely instrumental. I definitely think that'd be a good one. Nestor Makhno would be a good 5th. Is industrialization a net positive or negative for humanity? To be determined is my answer. Really depends upon how the next few decades go. There's a fun Wikipedia article read. Check out the politics session. Just a buck wild political biography. Jeff Monson. Oh my. Oh, is this the Antifa MMA guy? Monson's an anarcho-communist. He presently hosts a multi-platform political and social commentary program on RT called Monson TV. In 2015, Monson sought Russian citizenship, citing that he felt Russian in spirit. He was granted Russian citizenship in 2018 by Vladimir Putin. Monson expressed a desire to join the Communist Party of the Russian Federation in a video appeal to the party and praised socialism as the only way for the human species is going to survive. Soon after, he was invited to meet the Communist Party of the Russian Federation's leader, Gennady Zyuganov, in his office in the State Duma, where they discussed the future of communism in Russia and globally. Monson then later led a procession across Red Square into London's mausoleum together with Zyuganov. This sounds super anarchist right now. He was appointed as a special representative of the International Cooperation of the Communist Party of the Russian Federation Sports Club in 2016. Subject of a political advertisement released in the run-up to the 2016 State Duma elections. Monson stated his political views are, I am an anarchist, someone who would like to do away with all class hierarchy in society and the institutions that promote the inequality. Has a sponsorship from AK Press and has several anarchist symbols and communist symbols tattooed on his body. In solidarity, he's a member of the Industrial Workers of the World. Announced on Twitter that he became a citizen of the Luhansk People's Republic to support local people who wanted to who suffer in the war in Ukraine. Oh my! So this is like one of the Putin puppet states? I don't remember. He was made an honorary citizen of the Republic of Abkhazia. Oh my. Interesting. Interesting. He's an MMA fighter, yeah. Jeffrey Monson. It's a weird mix of being It's a weird mix of being an anarchist, but also being like very interested in like the far right wing oligarchy that is the Russian Federation and Vladimir Putin, and being close with like RT and stuff like that, and then supporting like a sort of like puppet state in Ukraine. That is a weird mix of things to believe in. Ruben was on the Young Turks and he was more socially liberal. That's kind of... I did remember hearing that. There was an Antifa MMA fighter. I already looked at that. Zomo242. Hi, how you doing? Good? Good? What's it called? I got 10 minutes left in the stream. I'm pretty tired, I'm not going to lie. My throat is pretty burnt out right now. Hitchens, Dawkins, and company laid the foundation for the horrendous debate culture. Yeah, New Atheism did... Maybe I should make a Tristan Won't Shut Up video about New Atheism, because I feel like New Atheism destroyed internet... destroyed internet discourse in a pretty big and significant way that we don't really appreciate. He also got caught spraying anarchist propaganda in the U.S. and also tried to copied resist arrest and blockaded military equipment and shipments. Hella threatening, yeah. I definitely, from the pictures of him, I don't want to fuck with him. Do you think the protests will keep going if Biden wins? I worry that people would go back to sleep. At Steve Shives. I think that some people go back to sleep, but I think that like the Black Lives Matter protests will still keep going. Because Black lives still aren't being acknowledged, and Joe Biden is going to kind of roll the what's it called? Keep the same fucking thing going of police murdering black people. So I do think that I do think that that's going to continue happening. I don't think that's going anywhere. As atheism becomes more common, what place do you think religion will have in the future? I think religion will be around. I feel like it's going to be it's a sign of identity and community and family for people. So I am very much like under the impression that religion will still exist in some form. It might be a lot more loose and disassociated from like tangible factual statements about the world, but it'll still exist. It's still important to a lot of people's identity. I got the Word document mixed up. Oh. I found something important. Oh, boy. Vacuuming my duck. It's a video of somebody vacuuming a duck. Well, that made my that's a thing. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm sundowning so hard right now. We need to keep talking about something for 7 minutes. Come on. Give me your energy. I need vibes. I need to devour some vibes. Unfortunately, the stream is like so delayed, especially on YouTube. It's gonna take a while. I'm trying my best. I get it. It's a lot. It's late. I am in pain. I've been talking so much and so fast that like my tongue hurts. It's that intense. It's quite a day. Listen to Patrick Stewart's real accent. Oh god. This is going to turn into Tristan looks at YouTube videos thing. That's what Friday is for. What's your favorite history channels? A long time ago is a good one. What's a good history channel? Kind of giving it a little searchy search right now. Kogito is a pretty good YouTube channel, or a pretty good history channel. The Cold War, if I do say so myself. There's just something that come to mind off the top of my head. I'm trying to find let's see, his real accent. I'm not really finding Patrick Stewart's real accent anywhere on YouTube anyway. Yeah, Overly Sarcastic Productions is pretty good. Would we be better with Harris? I mean, maybe. BC Bud, nay or yay? I don't even remember what that is. Do you have any spoilers for the next video on the main channel? It's going to be a sequel to, it's going to be Dinesh D'Souza Endgame. Do you think it's impossible for humans to communicate with other big brain animals because it's impossible to perceive reality the way an elephant or a whale does? Similar to how it's impossible for us to perceive things in the fourth dimension. Fuck, dude, I'm not high enough to answer that question. It's fucking cool shit, but like, whoa. Do you know, it'd be cool in alt history where the first peoples were able to domesticate some of the megafauna before it died out, like using ground sloths as oxen. That'd be pretty sweet. Is this,
We can't bust heads like we used to, but we have our ways.
Oh dear.
One trick is to tell them stories that don't go anywhere. Like the time I caught the ferry over to Shelbyville? I needed a new heel for my shoe.
See, this is why I don't like watch videos on the Tuesday stream, because you just like someone says to you one link and they're like, watch video. I command you to watch video. Dance, monkey. But then like everyone's like, oh, he's watching videos. Quick, send him links to all the videos. And then it's like, ah, geez, I started a thing. Where are videos for the reactor submitted again? To the Discord. There's a reactor channel you can submit to.
So, I decided to go to Morganville.
Is this it?
Can you still rustle up a Huddersfield dialect?
Huddersfield's got a very particular sound to it. Every Christmas, my mother's sister, my Auntie Annie, used to recite a poem. I was sitting by Arsenal last evening. My mother and father were off. Because they'd heard that my old Aunt Susanna were laid up in bed with a cough. She's some brasses, my old Aunt Susanna.
Oh my,
that's
that's a
she's looked
fucking
at.
accent. Alright. I remember watching the Chinese Civil War video very early in the morning, getting ready to do an internship on a film set. Well, Matt, I wrote that script. I wrote the Chinese Civil War video. So, I hope you liked it. I remember that one. I wrote this. I specifically wrote that video. I wrote, what's it called? All of your favorite, I wrote basically all of the Cold War scripts that are about America or about, like the West. That's like my job in the Cold War, is I am the capitalists. I write all the stuff about the capitalists. And then somehow I got the Chinese Civil War because they just, I don't know, they just assigned it to me one day. Maybe just end early. There's an idea. Yeah, maybe that's the thing I can do. What's that accent from? Yorkshire. Yeah, you know what? It's a couple minutes early, so I think it's good to call it an evening. Let's go find someone to raid, though. Is Irene active? Doesn't look like she's active right now. Let's do Mecha Sloth. I haven't rated Mecha Sloth yet. Alright, everybody. Sorry for being a little brain dead there at the end, but I'll be back on Friday. Hopefully you guys have a good week. Peace out, friends.